How can you configure the next trip mode on your Fronius Wattpilot device? That is what we are going to show you in our today's how-to video. Please note, for our video we are using the app version of the Fronius Solar.wattpilot app version 1.5.0, and of course all the settings that you do here in the Wattpilot app you can redo by just setting the Wattpilot to its factory settings back again. Okay, so first of all, let's have a look on how to configure the next trip mode on the Wattpilot device. First of all, with the Wattpilot you have two modes available for PV surplus charging. First of all, you have the Eco mode, and second up you have the next trip mode. With Eco mode, the Wattpilot will make sure that only PV surplus energy is being charged into your electric vehicle without usage of the public grid and without the usage of your PV battery stationary storage. So whenever you want to make sure that you use only PV surplus energy, please use the Eco mode. And second up, we have the next trip mode in the case of there is no PV surplus energy during a day and you want to make sure that firsthand you are charging with PV surplus energy. But for example, when there is a bad day and you have snow on the modules and no PV surplus energy, of course you want to make sure that a minimum amount of range, a minimum amount of energy is being charged into your electric vehicle until the next day to make sure that you can leave the house again. So therefore you can alternate the Eco mode, the next trip mode and the standard mode easy by just clicking the button on the front side of the device. So now, right now we are in standard mode. You can click the button once for Eco mode and you can click the button a second time for the next trip mode. With the LEDs on the device, it shows you in which mode you are. Second up, you can also alternate the modes directly in the app, and here at the charging page you can see the left bubble, it is called next trip. And here you can just open up the page and then you can alternate the Eco mode, you can alternate the next trip mode, or you can go back into standard mode. So in our case we now want to use the next trip mode, therefore we are clicking on it and click on save on the right top side. Yeah, and then for the settings of the next trip mode and how do you want to charge, you can alternate this by clicking on the right hand side of this clock symbol here. And now you are in the settings of the next trip mode, and here you can set the settings for the next trip mode and how do you want to charge the electric vehicle. First of all, we have here a minimum amount of charging, and therefore you can either choose between kilometers of range or kilowatt hours of energy. This is the minimum amount that should be charged in your electric vehicle, at least even if there is no PV surplus energy during the day. So for example, in our case, we are using 120 kilometers of range and we want to assure that these 120 kilometers are being charged into the electric vehicle for the next day at 8 AM in the morning. So therefore the Wattpilot will make sure that at least these 120 kilometers of range are being charged into the electric vehicle until the next day 8 AM in the morning. Yeah, down below you now see here the button Eco mode after next trip mode, and therefore with that you can make sure that the Wattpilot will re-enter Eco mode after the next trip mode. So for example, it is 8 o'clock in the morning now and you are not leaving the house, so your plans have changed and you are staying within the electric vehicle within the house and it is still connected to the Wattpilot. With this setting, when you activate this button, you can make sure that the Wattpilot will re-enter the Eco mode after that and make sure that whenever there is PV surplus energy, then the Wattpilot will still charge your electric vehicle to make sure that you are using the best of your PV system. Yeah, and last but not least, down below you can alternate the consumption per 100 kilometer. And this is where you can put in the mileage of your electric vehicle. So for example, it is default 15 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometer, but let's assume you're driving a big SUV. Therefore you want to alternate the consumption and put it, for example, to 23 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And this is of course important for the minimum amount of charging. For example, when we now set 150 kilometers for the next day, then this value will change depending on the consumption per 100 kilometer that you give in for your electric vehicle. So therefore you need to know your own mileage, your own consumption of the electric vehicle, then you can put it inside here. When you have done all the settings correct, then you can click on the right upper side on Save, And after that, the next trip mode is being saved to your device. And now the Wattpilot is waiting to get a PV surplus energy from the roof. Or if there is no PV surplus energy, it will make sure that these 150 kilometers are being charged until 8 AM the next day. So I hope this was informative for you and you can use it to set in the next trip mode for your next charging session.